What if I told you that you could make gluten-free Sephardic-Turkish style borrecas that taste just like the original, but their dough is 100% gluten-free? Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally That Girl in the Kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make a gluten-free Sephardic-Turkish style borreca. Yes, a gluten-free borreca, very reminiscent and very similar to the classic Sephardic-Turkish style borreca that so many of us know and love. But this is completely gluten-free, and it works perfect for anyone with gluten sensitivity, anyone who can't eat gluten or chooses not to, or has celiac or any type of autoimmune disorder where they cannot have gluten. It's absolutely perfect, and you won't miss the gluten. It's delicious. We're going to make a few tweaks to my classic dough. We're going to change the type of fat, change the temperature, add a special little ingredient, and boom, we have an amazing gluten-free borreca dough. So I'll be sure to include the link to my other borreca videos so that you can get ideas for different fillings. Since today I'm going classic potato cheese, but you can fill them with spinach and cheese, eggplant and cheese. There is a eggplant, onion, and tomato filling. There's so many different options for you. So I'll be sure to link that in the description so you can fill this with whatever you want. But you're gonna be astounded by how quick and easy we can put this dough together and how beautiful the results. So I am super excited to teach you how to make these. So let's not wait another second, and let's get started. So in this particular video, I'm going to be going with a cheese and potato filling. I'm not going to go into all the details because all of my fillings are already featured in my other borreca videos. So in order to make those fillings, just choose which one you want to make and then go ahead and follow that recipe. In this case, I'm going with feta, parm, and gouda, which I normally use in my tapada de papa y queso, also known as my potato and cheese borreca pie. I've boiled, drained, and mashed some potatoes, added it in with the cheeses, added in some beaten egg. I mix it all together and I have my filling. As I said, you can find those recipes with exact measurements in my multiple borreca and tapada videos. I will include that link in the description area of this video. To make the gluten-free borreca dough, you will need 2 cups of gluten-free flour plus 2 rounded kitchen tablespoons separate and some more for sprinkling as you shape the borrecas. 2 teaspoons of xanthan gum, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 5 tablespoons of cold salted butter, 1 1/4 cups of cold water, 1 large egg that we'll be using for an egg wash, and a couple of ounces of grated Parmesan cheese for sprinkling on top of our borrecas. You will also need a couple of large baking sheets, some parchment paper, a tablespoon, 2 teaspoons, and 2 forks, along with a long thin knife, a bowl, a pastry brush, some dry measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a wet measuring cup. And for this dough, as opposed to my regular borreca dough, you're going to want to use a food processor. And you'll also need a large bowl that has a lid, or of course you can use plastic wrap. And finally, you'll need a cooling rack and some oven mitts. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is pull your butter out of the fridge. So we're going to need 5 tablespoons. These sticks have 4 tablespoons each. So I'm going to cut off 1 tablespoon off of this stick. And now I have a total of 5 tablespoons. And then all you're going to do is cut this into small cubes because we want this butter well distributed amongst the flour when we make our delicious dough, and by cutting it into small cubes, it'll be easy to mix in. So once you cut it up all into small cubes, put it on some parchment and place it in your freezer. You want to keep this real cold until we're ready to use it. Then you want to measure 1 1/4 cups of water in something you can place in the freezer. You want to pour it right in to something like a Pyrex measuring cup. I'm using water from the fridge, but I want to place it in the freezer so it gets even colder. So then
what you're going to do is you're going to pull out your food processor, and I've equipped it with a dough blade, but if you don't have one, that's okay. Your regular metal blade would also work perfectly fine. Then you're going to add in 2 cups of your gluten-free flour right into your food processor. And then the machine is really going to do the work for you in this borreca dough. You're just going to take a spoon, kind of spread that out a little bit. Then you're going to come in with 2 teaspoons of xanthan gum, which really adds that elasticity that you're missing from not having gluten. And then we're also going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder because that'll help give this a little bit of a rise. And then you're going to go ahead and add 1 teaspoon of salt. Then you're going to close your food processor, and then you're just going to pulse this a couple of times to get those ingredients mixing together. Then maybe turn it on to high just for a few seconds. Use your spoon if you have to, because since there's no moisture yet, the flour will tend to go to the sides of the food processor. So give yourself a hand with the flour and then pulse it a few times just to get the ingredients to combine. Then once you've done that, we're going to move on to our cold ingredients. So the fact that they're going to be cold really makes a difference. I normally use warm water and room temperature water in my regular borreca dough, but here cold is critical. We don't have gluten, so we need to build the structure. So we're going to use butter as our fat. It's nice and cold, and then again we're just pulsing a few times, and then once we pulse, we're going to move to high and just pulse just a little bit faster. And then once that's been somewhat incorporated, you're going to bring over that water. It's nice and chilly from the freezer. We're going to turn the speed on to low, but this time you're going to pour from the spout. So as that water comes in through the spout, it's mixing with that cold butter, the gluten-free flour, the xanthan gum, the baking powder, the salt, and it's really just going to start coming together as a dough. So I have this running on low and I'm just watching it because I want to make sure it picks up all the dry flour, and you're going to see how it automatically forms into a dough ball. I'm not doing a thing. I'm letting the machine do the work, and really in just a matter of a minute or maybe 2 at most, this has turned into a dough. And you see how it starts to come together, and we notice that there's no more dry ingredients left in the bowl. That's when you know your dough is ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to turn off my food processor. Now that I formed a cohesive dough, I'm going to remove my blade, whether it was plastic or metal, and then I'm going to just turn that dough over into a large bowl. And you see there's such little dough left in the food processor because it really just all came together. I just grabbed whatever little is left, and now I'm using a well-rounded kitchen tablespoon full of gluten-free flour, and I'm just going to turn that right on top of this dough, and with my hand I'm going to help incorporate that touch of flour. Now, the dough is so incredible to work with because it's so cold from the cold butter and water. It just feels absolutely wonderful in your hand. And don't be afraid to mix it in well. It's real cold, so you're not going to be melting that butter. So now we're going to come in with one more well-rounded tablespoonful of our gluten-free flour. And once again, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to use our hand and work that in so that it just gets absorbed by that dough. We're just going to bring it all together. And I'm telling you, I absolutely love working with this dough. It feels so beautiful in your hand. You're going to absolutely love working with it. It's almost therapeutic. So now I've brought in all that flour, and then I'm just going to gently bring the dough together. Just make a rough ball, and that way it's ready for us after we let it chill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not only let it chill because it's cold, but I'm also going to let it rest in the refrigerator. So now I formed it into a ball. I'm going to go ahead and cover it, as I said, either with a lid or with plastic wrap. And then I'm just going to place it in the fridge and allow our dough to rest and to stay nice and chilled until we're ready to work with it. So that should be about 45 minutes in the fridge. So I'm going to set a timer. And then when those 45 minutes are up, then I'm going to come and preheat my oven to 350 degrees. And I want two racks. I'm doing the center and the other one closer to the bottom. And then I'm going to bring out that bowl. I'm going to uncover the dough, which is nice and rested and chilled. Then I'm going to use a long, thin knife, and I'm going to portion this dough into 4 parts. But the trick here is we're going to be using one part of the dough at a time, and the other 3 parts will remain in the refrigerator as we work. We want this dough to stay cold. So what we do is we just grab one part, pull it out. The other 3 are going back in the fridge. We're going to cover the bowl again and pop it right back into the fridge. So then what we're going to do is we're going to work on this one piece, and once again we're going to very gently make it into a rough ball, and out of this fourth of the dough, I'm cutting it into 4 more parts. So each fourth is going to make 4. 4, 8, 12, 16 borrecas in total. So here we'll get our first 4 borrecas. Bring out your filling, whichever filling you chose to make, and 2 teaspoons to help you with the filling. And then you're going to bring out that gluten-free flour. You're going to use a tablespoon, and then you're just going to sprinkle a touch on your work area. I'm using the counter as my work area. I clean it well before I start, and I work directly on my counter. I find that it works very well. But the trick with this dough, as opposed to your regular borreca dough, you're going to press with the palm of your hand, the hard part of your hand, the same way you would do when you make a regular borreca. But it's critical that you always have some of that gluten-free flour on your surface, or this dough will stick. So don't be afraid to sprinkle on more gluten-free flour as needed to avoid your dough from sticking onto your work surface. So now I formed somewhat of a circle with my dough, and then what I'm going to do is, just like a classic borreca, I'm going to fill it. My filling is cold because I made it earlier and I left it in the fridge, and I find that 2 teaspoons really help to put that filling onto the dough. Now notice I use my thumbs to push the filling inward while I fold that dough over the filling and onto itself. And then the 2 parts of dough that meet, I just very gently use my thumbs and my index fingers to press those 2 pieces of dough together to form one. Now, if your borreca doesn't look very semicircular, just grab your long thin knife and then just help it along to form that semicircular shape, and then just grab that little bit of dough. You could add it in with the rest of your dough for your next borreca. Don't waste it. Then you're gonna flour even your fork. So not just your work area, but even your fork, or this dough will tend to stick to anything it touches, but by keeping everything floured, it will not stick. And then you're just going to press the edges down with the fork to simulate that fluted edge. My grandmothers often did this when they wanted to make their borrecas quickly and didn't want to braid their edges. They just press the edges down with a fork, and they're still absolutely beautiful, and they'll be just absolutely delicious. So then we're just going to repeat that process over and over until we form 16 borrecas. So I'm going to do this one just a little bit quicker. I'm just going to show you a total of 2 or 3 times to make sure you get the hang of it. And that's pretty much it. You just make sure your surface is floured. You flatten out that dough. You turn it into a circle as best you can. Then you want to fill it by using your teaspoons. Give it a nice bit of filling in the middle. Then you can use your fingers to kind of hold that filling as you bring the dough over the filling and have both ends of the dough meet. Then very gently press the edges together with your thumbs and index fingers, and then flour that fork and just press the edge and make it look beautiful. Notice I didn't have to cut anything off this time because I'm just using my hand to make it look nice and semicircular. Beautiful. Then I'm placing it on one of my trays, which I have lined with parchment paper. And since we're making 16, we're going to end up with 8 borrecas on one tray and 8 borrecas on the other. I'm using a large tray, so I could probably fit a dozen on each, but for today's purposes, I'm only making 16 borrecas. Of course, you can double this dough recipe or triple this dough recipe because I always make a ton of filling, which I end up baking off. So I just grabbed another piece of dough from the fridge, and I just wanted to show you that once again, I cut it into 4. And remember, I left the remaining 2 pieces of dough in the refrigerator covered. So the dough is always cold when I work with it. It makes it so much easier to work with, and it gives us a nice result. So this is how much I have left over after I made 16 borrecas. You can of course make more, but I'm gonna bake mine off, which no one complains about here. And my borrecas are looking absolutely beautiful, and they're gluten-free, which is insane. So what I like to do is grab a long thin knife, and I like to cut a couple of vents in my borrecas to let the steam out while these borrecas bake. It helps keep the borrecas from opening while baking and keep that filling inside. So then what you want to do is you want to crack an egg a little more beautifully than I just did. And then you just want to beat it well, and then you're going to use a pastry brush, and you're going to give each of these borrecas a really nice brushing of beaten egg. So you want to get all of it. You want to get the entire edge and the top of the borreca really well. You just want to paint that egg nicely on. And then what you're going to do is you're going to grab some grated Parmesan cheese, and you're going to sprinkle some Parmesan cheese right on top of your borrecas. And these guys are looking gorgeous. So the only thing left to do is to just kind of open those little vents, because of course sometimes the egg and cheese block them off a little bit. I want to make sure that they can release steam. And then I'm going to repeat the process with my other tray, because I'm going to be baking both of these trays at the same time. So again, a really good egg wash, a light sprinkle of parm, and some vents, and these guys are good to go, and they're ready to go into the oven. And I'm telling you, if I didn't tell you this was a gluten-free borreca, you would think it's a authentic Sephardic Turkish borreca. So you want to put both trays in the oven, and then what you want to do is set a 15-minute timer. But after 15 minutes, since we're baking 2 trays and we want even heat distribution, what I like to do is I change the position, top tray to bottom, bottom tray to top, and then I put in 15 minutes more on our timer to make a total of 30. And this is that leftover filling. I just added it into a baking dish. I put a little bit of the egg wash, a little parm on top, and I'm going to bake it off, and it's going to be delicious. So now, after 30 minutes have passed, my borrecas have baked. My gorgeous gluten-free borrecas have baked, and look at how beautiful they are, and I wish you could smell them. This smell is intoxicating. If you've been craving a Sephardic Turkish borreca, or even if you've never had a Sephardic Turkish borreca, you are going to satisfy that craving with these gluten-free Sephardic Turkish style borrecas. They are that good. So now what I've done is I've removed them from our baking trays. I've place them on a cooling rack, and I'm just going to allow them to cool just a bit, because I love these guys warm. And actually, to reheat them, you can pop them in the toaster oven or the air fryer, and they come out as if they were just taken out of the oven. So now, of course, I've served myself one because it's time for a taste test. And just look at how gorgeous, look at the color of this dough. It's golden, it's gorgeous, it holds together perfectly, just like a classic borreca would. It's just got the perfect amount of chew. It's filled with that delicious filling, and that dough, even though it lacks gluten, it does not lack flavor. These guys fly around here. I have to protect them or they will all be eaten at once. And I love them so much, I want the experience to last. So here I go. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. They're so crazy good. The dough is perfect. By using that xanthan gum and that baking powder and the butter, it is so tasty, and the texture is not brittle or dry at all. It's very much like an authentic Sephardic Turkish borreca, golden and beautiful. And even though it's a bit flaky, it's not dry or brittle like many of the gluten-free doughs can be. It's perfect. By using butter, we got that extra moisture in there. so delicious from middle to the edge. It's absolutely yummy. Mmm. Anyone who's been wanting a Sephardic Turkish borreca, or anyone really, anyone who's never even tasted them, mmm, this is quite the treat. There's really nothing in the world quite like it. And I really think this is a treasure that the Sephardics have given to the world. Just gorgeous, golden, delicious, and now you can make them gluten free. If you haven't noticed, I can't stop eating it. It's so good. I cannot promise that I won't have another one once I'm finished with this one because it is that crazy good. Perfect. That creamy, cheesy filling, that beautiful golden dough. It's just absolutely perfect from beginning to end. It's so good. And remember how I said I was going to bake off that extra filling? Well, I did, and I didn't even get a chance to film it before it started being consumed because it's super yummy.
So how crazy good do these gluten-free Sephardic Turkish style borrecas look? Yes, they look slightly different because of course we didn't braid the edge and we used our fork instead. But honestly, my grandmothers did that all the time. So it's still very, very classic looking and it's absolutely delicious. It just holds together perfectly. It's not crumbly or dry. It is astonishing. Honestly, it is so good. You're not going to believe it. And especially those who have been craving a borreca and haven't been able to have one, they are not going to believe it. They're going to be so grateful to you because this is an amazing, amazing classic dish that those who grew up eating it and suddenly can't are really going to miss. So definitely you want to try this out. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like it, to write me a sweet comment, to share my video with your friends. And of course, if you're not already subscribed here on YouTube, stop what you're doing, go over, subscribe to my channel, touch that little notification bell so that you get notified every time I put up a new video for you and something different and something out of the box. So definitely you don't want to miss those. And of course, if you're not following me on social media, you can find me as Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can find me as Sally That Girl FL on X, Snapchat, and on TikTok. And I'm also on Threads, also as Sally That Girl in the Kitchen. And of course, don't forget to follow my Amazon shop. You can find it as amazon.com/shop// Sally That Girl in the Kitchen. And of course, it's also attached to the banner of my YouTube channel and it's attached to my Facebook and Instagram pages. So you can find it that way too. And once again, I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.